Welcome back to The Working Lunch. I'm Jack Crumley. I am joined on this Friday by someone who I've seen on television or I've heard in my ear for a number of years now, Amy Wagner, who is now Vice President, Wealth Advisor at Fifth Third Bank. Very happy to have you on the show.
I'm happy to be here. It's a fantastic show. You guys are doing great work here.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. Thank you. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun. It's a good crew.
Yeah.
Wealth advisor feels like the kind of thing that other people go to for help. That's a very impressive title.
Thank you.
I think it is, because it's not like, retirement planning. But that's what is the scope of being a wealth advisor and being this VP that you are now?
Yeah, I think it's very all-encompassing. We live in a world that's so digital, and you've got access to such great information online, right? You've got online retirement calculators and things like that. So why would you need someone like me? Well, I think for a few reasons. First of all, if you wanted to retire early or put your kids through college, things start to become more complex. My grandpa retired from Cincinnati Millicron, and he had a pension. Right? Easy breezy. He was taken care of.
You show up at work every day, and then after an X number of years, you get to go home and you're done.
So gone are those days. Yeah. Now retirement is on us, and that involves a lot of planning. And it's not just socking money into your 401k, because all of your money is in a tax-deferred account. Then you could have a tax bump later.
Right.
And so there's tax strategy, and there's certain things that if you start those earlier on in your career, you can really set yourself up well. So I think one part of what I do is kind of an all-encompassing strategy or financial planning, right? It's kind of like, where are you now? Where do you want to go? And then what do we need to do? How do we get you there? Former journalist in me, it used to be who, what, when, where, why. Now it is, I focus on the how.
The how.
How of the story. Okay, I love this story. Let's help you get there. And let's talk about the how and the strategy behind that. And then there's a behavioral finance component to it also.
Oh, this is about doing things now to soften what you're spending?
Well, some of that. But some of that is we tend to make decisions with our money based on two emotions. Any idea what those are?
I'm going to say passion and anger.
Fear.
Fear's a good one.
And
sure.
Greed.
Okay.
Fear and greed.
I'm more of an angry spender myself.
So you could also be angry.
Yeah.
A lot of people, though, find themselves in a situation where greed looks like I saw something about everyone going in on GameStop.
Sure.
Right?
The meme stock
Yes,
stuff.
right, meme stock. So what's the next meme stock, right? And then they go all in on it and they lose their shirt on it.
That's insane.
Yes, right. Or my buddy said XYZ worked for him and made him whatever, and I'm going to go all in on that. Sometimes most of the time, that's not a great plan for people.
Is that what people do with the penny stock stuff too, with the day trading and the flipping and all that?
I know people who've done it, and as long as you've got money on the side, but it should not be your retirement.
Yeah.
But also fear. I see it a lot of time during election cycles when we're coming up on a presidential election, and people are passionate about their politics. That's absolutely fine. Check your politics at the door when it comes to your money, and that's a really hard thing to do. So I get calls. Every presidential cycle, usually starting in late summer, saying if this person gets in, we need to pull all my money out because
you're about to start
the
getting these
market's
calls.
going to tank.
Yeah.
The market's going to tank, right? And everyone has these crazy predictions of what's going to happen. And I get it. I get that. But I'm there as part of the relationship to remind my clients and the people that I get to work with of, hey, here's the stats going back to the 1920s on this, and it's down to the 100th of a percentile, the difference of whether a Democrat or a Republican is in the House. Sometimes it matters whether it's split, when you've got one house or one party in the House and one party in the Senate. But overall, politics do not play as big of a role in it as a lot of people think. So I try to remove feeling from people's financial plans because I have seen people just get killed.
Because they made the wrong move.
Sure. Go back to 2007, 2008. I remember I was pushing my son on the swing and my 401k statement came in, and it was down 40%. Never will I forget that. Exactly. I stayed in the market. I wrote it out. Lots of people pulled their statements out and said, I don't want this. I can't handle this. And what happened after that was a major rise, and people made a lot of money in the markets after that time. Some people were so burned and couldn't recover from those losses, which, by the way, were on paper for most people, right? Yeah. You don't lock in those losses unless you take that money out. Lots of people locked in those losses and never got back in, and they've missed so much growth in the market since then. So a lot of what I do is therapy, hand-holding, but also just keeping clients laser focused on these are our goals, and this is what we've got to do to get there.
Yeah, well, when you're talking about things like an upcoming election, when you don't know the way things are going to plan out, that's the definition of uncertainty. Yeah. And if there's one thing that markets hate, it's uncertainty. But that's all just emotional stuff. And having a financial advisor to hold your hand and to know all the different options, because like you were saying, if back in the day when there was a pension, you would be able to sock that away. And even in the early days of the non-pension years, and there were 401ks, and you would just sort of passively let that go, and then you retire, and then you're good to go. There's so many different options now.
There are.
I don't know the first thing about that stuff, and I would want somebody to do. I need a lot of hand-holding.
I was just on vacation last week. 30 people from my family, 4 generations. A few of my nephews and nieces are in their 20s, just starting out in their careers. And, by the pool, I'm hounding them. Are you putting your 401k contribution into a Roth? Do you have a health savings account? Are you maxing it out? Please understand that's a gift from the government. It never be taxed if you use it correctly. Mm-hmm. And walking them through the strategies of that, so they can start in their early 20s and build wealth over the course of their lifetime. So many people's regrets are just they got started too late, they didn't fully understand it. It's so easy to kind of put your head in the sand. I'm working, I'm putting money into my 401k, but a lot of people don't know, am I doing enough? And that's when you come to me and we can help you figure that out and actually put it in dollars and cents. Is there a shortfall, and what can we do? Or on the flip side of that, is there going to be money left maybe when you're in your 90s, and how do we strategically plan for that? Is there charitable giving, legacy planning? How can we help your kids maybe now, or do you want it to be later? But those are all conversations that we have as part of our meetings.
Well, and again, the idea of being intimidated, right? That's fear. That's another emotion.
Sure.
So if you do feel like you've started late, or it is too late, is there such thing as too late?
I mean, I do have people coming to me and say, I want to retire in 6 months. Here's what I have, make it work. Yeah. And sometimes that conversation looks like, oh, you're going to have to retire a little bit later, or you're going to have to spend less in retirement. And there's some things that you can do, but I would love to have a longer runway to retirement. I love, families in their 40s where maybe, income starts to, creep up, and we're getting into like bigger positions, and what do we do, and how can we be intentional? I just talked to someone the other day who wants to retire in 10 years. I'm like, great, we can actually make that happen.
Okay.
But here's the steps we have to start taking now. And it's really easy with young families to say, well, kids sports, kids this, right? Kids are expensive. Mm-hmm. And then to just keep putting it off. And I'd love for people to come to us a little bit earlier so we can just get them on a path and balance things. It's not all saving. Yeah. Some of it is spending now too, but figuring out what that right balance is for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, do you keep track of things like the way the annual salaries are going? And those numbers haven't necessarily always been trending in the right direction for a lot of working class folks. Yeah. And trying to, when you're grinding it out at, say, a full-time job or multiple part-time jobs, maybe you're doing a side hustle on some delivery app or whatever, that all feels really daunting then to, at the same time, trying to be able to prepare for a future.
Yeah. And I think the key is not even so much what you're making is what you're spending, right? And a lot of people just know money's coming out, or your money's coming in, it's going right back out, and I have no idea exactly what that looks like. And so kind of getting a handle on expenses becomes a really important part of that equation. I've got a young family that I work with who have both gotten great promotions over the past couple of years. They've got great salaries, they've also got younger kids, and we ran the plan recently for them, and there was a shortfall, and they were kind of flabbergasted by that. But they weren't saving much of it. You know, and so it becomes how much do you actually need to be setting aside for growth now in order to be able to live the kind of lifestyle that you want in retirement. So
is that the 4% rule bit? What's the 4% rule?
Yeah, so that can be part of it. It's essentially looking at how much you've saved, and if you pull 4%, so say you've got $1 million, right? You can pull 4% of $40,000 of that every year to live off of. So that with your Social Security. You know, whatever that ends up being, and there's going to be changes there in the 2030s. That's political. We won't get into that now. But, you know, essentially you can think about pulling 4% every year and not touching the initial principal that you put into that. For a lot of people that makes sense, for some people it doesn't. I always say kind of rules of thumb can be rules of dumb when it comes to specific circumstances.
Just if you're blindly following them.
But I think that's a great kind of rule to think through of, am I even close? And maybe if you're not, maybe it's time to talk to someone and figure out, okay, how do we get on the right path? It is very overwhelming for a lot of people. You know, so many of my clients have these fantastic careers. I can't imagine how to do what they do. Yet a lot of people think, well, I should know this stuff. I should get this stuff. And
that's the intimidation factor.
Sure. And, you know, I talk publicly a lot. And the first question I always ask in front of a crowd of people is, how many of you grew up in a home where your family talked openly about money? In a room, Jack, of 100 people, 3 to 5 will raise their hand.
Especially if you're in the Midwest. That's such a Midwest taboo.
Yes. Now, ask the children in my household if we talk about it regularly, and we absolutely do. They can't avoid it because I want to change that. You know, I think people need to be empowered to understand. When I first started in this business, I remember there were some people who would say, you need to talk slightly above people's heads because they need to know that they need you, that they don't fully understand it. That is not how I run my business.
That sounds like fear.
It's terrible. It's, hey, here's the strategy. Let's talk through why this makes sense for you. And then I want them to explain it back to me so that they can, on the weekend, when they're with their families, say, here, I'm going to do a Roth conversion, and here's why. Or we opened up a 529 for our kids, and here's why. Or we didn't open a 529, and here's why that made sense for us. And then I also say to parents who've got kids and they're teenagers and older, now talk to your kids about it.
Right.
Yeah,
pass this on.
That's the game changer for families. You know, and so much of wealth is, first of all, the actual wealth, but second of all, it's the understanding of how it works. And that's how you can be a game changer and a legacy maker for your kids.
And do your best to sit down with the kids and talk about the constant war over the air conditioning and the thermostat, because when that's up, it could torpedo your entire retirement savings. And maybe that's a way to keep the temperature standard and hold it in there steady for most of the summer. We got to take a break. We will be back with more Amy Wagner coming up after this. You're watching The Working Lunch on The Crown. Welcome back to The Working Lunch. I'm Jack Crumley, joined by Amy Wagner, Vice President at Fifth Third, Wealth Advisor, Vice President of Wealth.
Vice President, a Vice President. There are many Vice Presidents at Fifth Third, and I'm in the private bank there. But it's certainly a position that if you had told me in college I was going to hold at some point in my life, I would have never believed you.
Yeah, because you went to school. I've known you, at least have seen you on television for a very long time.
Yeah.
I remember you from back at the days at Channel 5. Did you go to school for broadcasting?
I did, yeah, broadcast journalism major. And that was always my plan. And, you know, started in a small market, Bowling Green, Kentucky, right out of college, worked my way up, made it. I'm from Northern Kentucky, so born and raised here. So Cincinnati was kind of the be-all, end-all for me. Yeah, and I loved it. And, you know, I have so many great stories and memories of my time there. But, you know, at some point, it kind of became not a great balance for my family.
It's tough.
Yeah, and, you know, I got into this industry. And this is a weird thing, but I knew in fifth grade this is what I wanted to do. But the reason why is, and I think this is a weird thought for a fifth grader, but I wanted to give people information that made a difference.
Okay.
So that was kind of my guiding light. And that's what led me to journalism. But it applies to what I do so much now. Giving people information that makes a difference in their lives. I mean, money is a very personal thing. It's a tool. You know, you can control it or it can control you. So what I do now is incredibly gratifying in that way. But I was actually talking about my career recently with someone, and they give me credit for, being so strategic, but this sort of happened in an interesting way.
Yeah, how did the pivot happen?
Yeah, so I was an investigative reporter at Channel 19 at the time, and I was covering a Ponzi scheme.
Okay.
And at the same time, there were two guys who had founded an investment firm in Blue Ash. Nathan Backrack and Ed Fink had started this firm, Simply Money, and they were just doing some succession planning. Their firm was built in an interesting way, and they had a lot of media associated with it. They had the Simply Money radio show every day, and they had the Simply Money radio, or the TV segments, and a column in the Inquirer.
Yeah.
So they had also had some clients come in and say, why aren't you guaranteeing 20% like this guy Glenn Guillemot is?
Oh, geez.
Turns out it was a Ponzi scheme, and it was a story that I was covering. I ended up, finding Glenn and his family. They left.
How was that conversation?
It was a very interesting conversation, but we ended up with an exclusive interview with him, and spent a lot of time with, the people who were impacted by this in a bad way. And what my takeaway was, there's so much trust that can be broken so easily in this, and people who don't necessarily aren't in this for the right reasons. And so Nathan and Ed were following the story and came to me and said, well, you did a great job with these investors, these victims of this. Would you have any interest? And they took a major chance on me because they didn't have a major financial background, but I knew I was supposed to do it. So I did it. I got licensed. I started doing hour-long personal finance radio shows, and I learned from Nathan and Ed. Ed is a brilliant economist, and just spent so much time with him learning about trade wars and Brexit and things that have happened and how we can look at them from the economy standpoint. And after a while, it was like, well, I'm talking about this on the radio. Why would I not start taking on clients? I've done all the work. I'm licensed to do it. So I started to take on clients.
Natural progression, sure.
Just love it. And so did that for a really long time. And Fifth Third Private Bank reached out to me. And such a great reputation, obviously, here in Cincinnati. But what attracted me to it is the team approach. I used to be a team of one, working on behalf of my clients, and now I have a team of 3, 4, 5 people. I need to figure out a better way to describe how we do this, but the concept of the tumor board, when someone has cancer and you bring
You definitely need to figure out a better way to describe this.
I know, but stick with me here. You
right.
bring all the experts to the table for the situation in what is the best outcome for this patient. That's how we look at it for our clients. We bring all the experts to the table and say, here's what we're trying to do here. What's the most tax efficient way to do this? How should we be looking at estate planning? What kind of trust might they need? How do we approach this for them? And it's the best and the brightest of the city. It's people who just love working with others. They want to do the best that they can for them. It's the best group of people I've worked with in a really long time. There's such an energy downtown. I work in the building downtown, and I just love it. So it's kind of the best group of people, and also just that team approach, which, going back to media, I loved. I mean, it takes an entire team to put this on. They might see Jack Crumley, but what they don't see is everything that happens behind the scenes.
There's a tremendous amount of people behind the scenes that make this show good.
A lot of people that make things work, and I think the private bank at Fifth Third does that in one of the best ways I've ever seen in this industry, with really just a heart for the client. So that's what attracted me. I do miss a little bit the media, so I love doing things like this so that I can get in front of people and talk to people like you.
Happy to have you in the chair. Thank you very much for that. What if you made it more like an American Idol comparison, where you've got this holistic approach of experts, you got the judges that sit there and tell people about their song selection, and if they were a little pitchy, and certain judges know a little bit more about certain things than others, and they give advice. That's the best I can do in terms of veering away from the tumor board.
Yeah. All right, I'll stick with that. And then I can be like Paula Abdul or Carrie Underwood or someone. That's a much better situation.
There is, though, I do think that there is a bit of a comparison to like being a doctor in what you're doing, because in the same way that, when we talk about people being intimidated by finances and feeling like maybe they waited too long, in the same way, if someone's, got maybe a bump on their their arm that they don't know what it is, and they put off going to the doctor to get it checked out, and then all that fear starts to build up, and then you never end up doing anything when you really should be going to a person who knows exactly what's going on, or can at least take a biopsy metaphorically and figure it out, and then give you a plan for how to deal with things going forward.
Well, and sure, one of the things I always appreciate with my doctors is when they say, oh, there's some new research out that I've been reading about in XYZ, and here's how it might apply to you. You know, one big beautiful bill changed things for some business owners and for individuals, and how do you take advantage of that, and how do you avoid any pitfalls? I mean, do you want to read 1,000 pages of tax legislation? Probably not, but we have experts who are well versed on how can we take advantage of this as business owners. How do we need to be thinking through this? So, yeah.
What is the one thing that you wish people knew before, you know, without having to come to ask for help or whatever? What's the one thing that drives you crazy that folks don't know that you think that they should?
I think first is start early. But if I could add a second thing, it would be don't be intimidated by it. We've got so many resources, whether you're finding someone, you know, someone like me to work with, or whether it's just Googling some stuff, but just get some information that empowers you. The longer you put it off, the more you ostrich, head in the sand, the less options that you have later in life.
Yeah, for sure. You post on LinkedIn recently. Sorry, I always stalk people's LinkedIn before I have them on as guests. The big family gathering recently. What else do you guys do for fun? You got the fam. You've got kids that are growing up and learning about money, presumably. What do you do family-wise to keep things occupied?
So 4 kids. One of them, Grace, is a finance major, so she might be following in my shoes someday. We're still in high school sports with my son, so
which is just busy all the time.
That keeps us busy. We love to travel. I have a heart for women, so I'm a big part of the Northern Kentucky Chamber Women's Initiative. Love doing that. Master Provisions in Northern Kentucky. I lost my mom to breast cancer, so breast cancer research is a big thing to us. But my mom, the last few years of her life, volunteered at a food pantry, and her takeaway was, you know, I could so easily focus on what I'm going through, but then I see these families that come in and they don't know where the next meal is going to come from, and my problem seems so small compared to that. So now that we've got some kids out and we're starting to get closer to the empty nest, I'm starting to think through how can I give them my time more. So Master Provisions, on a committee there now to kind of help them steer some of their marketing efforts and fundraising. So yeah. It's kind of entering into a new part of my life when the kids are getting out of the house, but we're still having a lot of fun.
Which is a conversation I'm sure you've had with clients over the years too about we're about to be empty nesters. What do we need to do differently because we're not going to be maybe spending all the time on the kids? And
yeah, my husband and I spend a lot of time talking about retirement because I spend my days talking about retirement. I've seen the things that people plan on that change, the things that work and the things that don't, and I talk really openly with family members and friends about it too, because I'm just passionate about, we spend a lot of time working, and how do you then use the resources that come from working to, you know, have a good balance now, but also a great life later.
Yeah, how do you make all that work worth your while?
And understand that money is just a tool, and if you use it and use it wisely, it can make such a huge difference.
So the big takeaway here is, you know, don't feel intimidated.
No.
If you, it's probably never too late.
No.
Depending on what your timing on things is and what your goal is versus what can actually be done. But, you know, go to Fifth Third, talk to one of their people, reach out to an Amy Wagner type and figure out, make a plan, and you get somebody who actually knows what's going on to try to plan things out so you don't have to be so scared all the time.
And a first conversation is just a first conversation.
Right.
You know, you can learn from it, and you know, you're not necessarily saying, I'm going to spend my life with you and you're going to be my advisor for life, but you will pick up something just from having the conversation.
Yeah, learn stuff about it.
Yeah.
Amy Wagner, Vice President at Fifth Third, wealth advisor, former media personality and reporter, a name and a voice and a face you could probably trust. Trust me, that's pretty good advice. We're going to take a break. When we get back, we got more Working Lunch coming up for you. You're watching The Crown.